It's the Sod Pod, brought to you by Grassland Agro. The Sod Pod. Hello, and welcome to the Sod Pod. This is episode 15. On this episode, Johnny and Ed were joined by the latest member of the Grassland Agro Team, Peter Linden, and they also caught up with Joe Dunphy from Teagasc. Have a listen.
Listen, be delighted to be joined today by Peter Linden, Joseph Dunphy and Edward Healy. So, Joe, you've actually been on the podcast before, but Peter is a new recruit to Grassland Agro. So, Peter, you're very welcome on today.
Thanks, John. Lovely to be on. Thank you.
You're a cabin man, Peter?
Monaghan.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
You insult the man from the very start.
sorry, Peter.
That wouldn't be unlike John, though, to be fair.
No, it's a genuine mistake now, Peter. It's a genuine mistake.
In with the boot straight away.
Yeah. Well, it has been a very tough year in relation to grass growth. It's been a brilliant year for hurling. I think we can all agree, especially with the fantastic victory for Clare a couple of weeks ago. So that's brilliant, but we won't go on about that too much today because I'll get bothered. But Joseph Dunphy from Teagasc.
Someone mute John there, was there?
Joseph Dunphy from Teagasc Grassland. I was just about to say it's brilliant to have you on, but we brought you on especially to talk about Clare's victory. I'm sure your great colleague John Maher is very upset because we bet Kilkenny in the semi-final, and I suppose he's number one team now, Cork in the final. So he must be a mourning below, Joe, is he?
Yeah, the Monday after it. Now there wasn't too much talk out of him, so.
Oh, the poor old creator. But lads, we have a good spread across the country here. So Joe, just while we're with you there, grass growth up around the northwest. How's it looking?
Yeah, sure. Look at after a horrendous enough June and I suppose early July period, things are beginning to improve. I suppose if we take pasture base as a whole at the minute, John, things are looking a little bit better. Average farm covers back up to 725, cover per livestock unit 225. So and growth rates are in around 60 kilos to dry matter per hectare. So like in general, it's an improving situation. I suppose that northerly breeze during June for up our end of the country, like, you know, it just burned the place alive. Poor growth rates. Stemmy grass. We'll probably chat about it a little bit again in a while, but it just kind of seemed what, grass growing to 1,000, 1,100, then, shooting up a stem, and, it was very difficult there throughout June and early July. But again, as I said, things are improving, and look, we could do with a right good August now.
For sure. Peter, up in the northeast, how's it looking up in Monaghan?
Yeah, so look at it like that. June was a very, very challenging month, I suppose. No different than Joe there. Starting to see a wee bit of late. Again, the average farm covers are up here probably around the 700 mark, and growth probably just about covering, the demand is there. Probably even across the different soil types, we've seen a fair variation, like even probably on the drier soils there, I like say heading for Loud, that direction. Only maybe 2 weeks ago, seriously, they were struggling. There was some places silage in, whereas, not too far away, maybe on heavier soils heading towards North Monaghan, they were looking at maybe potentially taking out paddocks. They were flying it.
Down the southeast?
Yeah, look, things are improving big time. The whole time, John, we're probably looking at growth rates at the moment. They're around the 60 kilo mark, which is great going. I suppose we look same as everywhere around the Kilkenny area. The southeast has been struggling this year, but things are starting to kick on a little bit. We've had a great week now this week. Mainly the heavier ground is starting to pump grass there, and I suppose, look, quality is starting to improve a little bit after all the corrective action that's been taken over the last couple of weeks there as well. So, look, we'll keep our fingers crossed it stays that way, John.
Yeah, everything is looking good in Clare as well. To be a very short winter. Thomas is only giving us a 2-month winter.
The stones are growing well.
2-month winter, so we have a lot to thank Liam McCarthy for on that one. But just in relation to, I suppose, the National Feed and Fodder Security Committee, Joe, I suppose made a big splash a couple of weeks ago. We covered it here. I've heard you talking about it as well. And in general, one of the key actions from that was to do a fodder budget. And it's something that I've seen you mention a lot in the Grass 10 newsletter as well. First question is, are farmers doing them? Is there any indications that we're still going to be in bother after the second cut is starting to come in there in the last week, or do you have any feel for that at the moment, or it's too early to say?
Yeah, so I suppose firstly there, John, looking at the situation, like if we look at the pasture-based figures to the 1st of July, we're probably about 3/4 of a ton back on the 5-year average, and probably about a ton back on the 10-year average. So it's a significant amount of grass that's growth that's back this year so far, I suppose. And I suppose that the other thing about that's a paper figure, it's a computer figure. Like if we've tramped a lot of grass into the ground during April, that's not 100% accounted for. Like and then maybe grass topped with poor quality, dismowed in June, and maybe not all accounted for. Like that figure could be 30 or 30%. Worse essentially. Like so, it could be more than the 3/4 of a ton or the ton. So, like if we were to do that very very quick figures, like a ton to the hectare, it's 4.5 bales to the 4.5 bales to the hectare. Like you're probably talking about 180 bales or 160 ton on a standard 40 hectare farm. Like if we look at it, 100 cows, like it's a full month's winter feed at a bale and a half a month, so it's a significant amount of feed we're back so far this year. And I suppose the figure there that you're talking about, maybe from the fodder the committee that I suppose they looked at about 500 farms, about half of them on the dairy side, and from the dairy side of things there, with a figure that about 40% of dairy farmers reckon that when they had their second cut, that they still wouldn't have 100% of their winter feed, made up. So there's still, as you said, things have improved again in the last couple of weeks, but there's probably still a little bit of work to do on farms there, John, throughout the country, just in terms of securing the 100% of winter feed.
Yeah, 40% is a fairly big figure there, Joe. I know a good few of the Teagasc offices around the country now have been doing. They've been running little workshops over the last number of weeks there to try and look at. I know they've been looking at nitrogen allowances, but they've also been trying to work out and work through the kind of the fodder budgets with farmers. I suppose from what you're seeing out there, are fodder budgets being used around the country at the moment, and are many farmers actually coming to you with questions on that?
Yeah, I think looking in general, we're pushing the fodder budgeting tool on pasture base, and I suppose look at what we're trying to get people doing, and I suppose it's maybe especially people who have been tighter over the last couple of years and have been maybe I suppose have been on the edges to do it early in the summer, and as you add your second cut into it, review it and make a plan, because the last thing you want to do is end up in the back end of the year and have no plan in place. And it's on a lot of these farms, it's not going to be a silver bullet. It might be, trying to buy some bales as the second half of the summer goes on. It might be a couple of high cell count cows being removed a little bit earlier. It could be maybe buying an alternative feed source or something there to feed at, to help build grass on the farm. It's going to be a multitude of things that help the overall situation. It's not going to be one silver bullet that's going to solve all the issues, so but yeah, we're looking at there's a lot of people using the fodder budgeting tool on pasture base, and we want to push it out further, and to help farmers plan ahead. That's what we want to get ahead of issues so.
Yeah, and one of the things they were mentioning on the committee was that forage crops are up, but Ed, me and you seen a couple of crops of maize there, and unless they score a Tony Kelly goal there in the All-Ireland final, a pure miracle of a thing, they're not going to amount to a huge amount, because they are very, very poor.
Yeah, I think a bit of compensatory growth is probably needed, just like Tony Kelly compensated for the whole season in that last game.
Yeah. Came up when we needed him.
We were Jesus. A couple of the crops that we saw last weekend were borderline failing. So look, hopefully there will be a bit of a kick now with this bit of sunlight that we're getting now. Hopefully things will drive on a bit.
I think, lads, I suppose the second cut is rolling in. The fields are very busy. They are around me here anyways. There's lots of mowing going on. I know there's a real good fine week there at the moment. Is there much mowing going on up around you, Peter, or any reports of second cut, or how's it looking?
Yeah, look, there's a lot going on there at the minute. As you see, a lot of machines moving on the road. Probably, look, when we're out doing some of the cutting ways, they're coming in probably around about 6 ton a hectare is what we're seeing. Again, so look, no different than any other parts of the country. There probably still will be a deficit there. The fact some of the first cuts were back and just due to the weather that didn't just get the quantity or the quality we wanted,
Yeah, so if there's 40% of farmers who won't make up 100% of their winter feed requirements with second cut, there's obviously going to have to be a lot of third cuts maybe put in place there as well. So what's the thinking, lads? If there's slurry around, maybe a good option. What we think on nitrogen, 50, 60 units, including slurry. What would you go, Joe?
Yeah, so look, if there's an allowance there, I'd be thinking somewhere in around 60 units for kind of like maybe something like a 3 ton dry matter, maybe sitting around 6 ton fresh or something like that. 6 ton fresh crop, so you're talking maybe 60 units, so that maybe be like the likes of a bag of protected 46 or something like that, plus your 2,500 gallons of good quality cattle slurry, and if not, maybe going with a P&K source from something else in, but ideally slurry and a bag of protected urea is simple. If you're a little bit tighter on the allowances, maybe cut that back to somewhere in around maybe 50 units, and something like your 38 plus 7 or something like that, 40 units of nitrogen plus your slurry will do the job there. A
lot of talk about protected urea, year effect, or what's your thinking?
Yeah, sure. Look at it's a year it's a year effect from what we can see from the research, and I think obviously farmers are disappointed, farmers are frustrated because it's just it's just been a horrendous year from a wet spring, and we kind of got maybe a little bit of a bounce for a couple of weeks at the end of May, and we kind of think we're away with it, and you get into a very harsh June, very, very cold. And from talking to a few people like Savannah Murray in Moore Park there, soil mineralization is back. They've a ton less grown on zero nitrogen plots. So that tells us from maybe solar radiation and soil mineralization, there's not as much happening. But when we look at fertilizer performance and the trials in Johnstown Castle, the trials in Clonakilty, they're all saying the same, that there to the 1st of July, there was 6 ton grown on all the trials, be it urea, protected urea or CAN, they were pretty much consistent across. So it's a year effect as opposed to a fertilizer type effect.
Yeah, and that's probably a really important point there, Joe. We have had cooler conditions, we've had probably slightly more compaction than we would have normally had. We've had a lot more rainfall as well, and that mineralization element is not something that's generally taken into account when we're putting together our nutrient management programs, but it does contribute a lot of background nitrogen that's actually required for the crop. So that's generally, if that's going to be back, also our nitrogen allowances are back, and probably because we've had a later year as well, the amount of rounds that we've gone with have been back as well. So there's a combination of a bunch of different things there. Along with the likes of the effect of our P&K and our pHs and everything else that's there, it's a very, very, very difficult year to blame, I suppose, grass growth on one specific thing. It's just been a perfect storm of difficult things going against grass growth. But it's not just grass growth. Every other crop has struggled up to this point as well. So yeah, it's just. Look, it's been a hard year, and hopefully things will start to improve. But I wouldn't be so quick to throw in the towel on the NBPT protected urea yet, because it's a very hard year now to judge anything.
100%, yeah. No, and the trial work is saying the same. And look at, as I said at the start, it's obviously disappointing and it's frustrating. And if we're back a ton, as you say, like it's for that standard farmers, off the shelf, 40 hectares, 100 cows, it's a month's winter feed. Like, it's a phenomenal amount of stuff. Like, and especially if you were tight coming out of a wet winter, early last back end, late this spring, lots of people were seeing the backs of the pit, and the pile of good bales was gone last back end, and then you were seeing the back of the silage pit this spring, so it's it's obviously frustrating, but look at I suppose the trial work is telling us that it's not a fertilizer type, it's a year effect.
Yeah.
And to add on to what you said there in terms of just multifaceted, so.
Important, lads, as well, just that it's NBPT is the inhibitor that you're using as well. It's just very, very important point. It's a little bit trickier for maybe listeners or farmers, but it's just that you make sure you're getting your NBPT protected urea. And I suppose it's a little bit like human nature. We're all kind of looking for someone to blame. Like I never thought I lost a match in hurling or football or soccer that the referee wasn't at fault for, so. But it is, you're always trying to look for someone to blame, maybe then saying, geez, I shouldn't let my man score 3-5 or whatever, or I should have maybe done a little bit more training and stuff like that. I think it's when we change something maybe in the system. And I think a lot of the thing as well is that we're spreading maybe a lot lower rates, and we haven't the P&Ks really, we've touted this for a long time, and you nearly don't want to be like, I told you so, but it's just not possible to grow grass without P&K. It just doesn't happen, and we've taken our foot off the pedal there for 2-3 years. We actually got a little bit of data there from David Wall earlier on, just backing up, Joe, exactly what you said, that all the MBPT urea, protected urea as we call it, with versus can or whatever else, they're all performing the same, and it's really all these other factors. But I suppose, well, it has been challenging. Hopefully it'll pick up now. We can't maybe get complacent now when we have a little bit of good weather. We do have a job to do. But another key thing, and it goes back to what you mentioned earlier as well, Joe, is that it has been a horrendous difficult year for grass quality. It's been really, really shocking, maybe up until lads could make some interventions in around. For some people it was as late as May before they could do anything to try and straighten out paddocks or take out surplus bales, of stuff that had gone real strong, that when they couldn't get out earlier on the time. What's the plan now? Should we be keeping an eye on that? Traditionally, we've been all summer, we wouldn't be as worried about grass supply. We would have been talking about quality grass, and we'd see John Maher outside in the field with the leaf and his party piece and all this stuff. I think you're going to try that now next. I think you have to do 10 years, is it, before you can attempt that one in the field.
Learn it from the best.
But quality.
Yeah, look at sure. It's been, as we said, it's I was talking to a farmer there recently. He said the last bales he cut, the last bales he cut was the 26th of May. He had cut 3 paddocks before that. Then he didn't cut a thing until the first couple of days of August. So that was kind of pretty much what was happening on a lot of farms. And then as we're getting this, I suppose, stemmy grass, people were a little bit, I suppose, still, because growth was so poor, they didn't really want to go around maybe dismowing after. They had no surplus, but didn't want to dismow because they're like, well, if I'm tight, I don't want to knock that back to 2 or 3 days or whatever. I'm probably going to need it. So people were just being careful about how much dismowing they did, and which in general has left a situation, because the last thing we want to do is start building covers with a lot of that's maybe stemmy grass that's there, maybe say 3 rotations or something like that there. So the last thing we want to do is carry that. So it's going to depend on exactly, John, what situation you're in your farm. If you're maybe slightly lower stocked and maybe back up to, say, 220, 230 a cow, it might be a situation, or maybe even over 230 a cow, it might be a situation there. Maybe we can take out our worst paddock maybe this week and bale it, and then it might be dismowing a couple of paddocks after grazing just to try and get that quality back in. If you're still tight at maybe 180, 190, 180, 190 cow at the minute, it's probably going to be a dismowing at this stage, unless we get a major bounce, in the next week or 10 days. But in general, most people, stocked at 3 or in around that, we're probably looking at in around between now and or in around the 10th of August to, we're starting to keep an eye on building, so it's it's going to be variable for, or it's going to be different for all farmers. But, if there's surplus there on the farm, maybe up to 220, 230 a cow at the minute, we probably have an option to take a paddock out for bales, a paddock or two out for bales.
Yeah, it's a good point, Joe, that you even differentiate between topping and dismowing, because you were talking about a really proper reset there now. You're not just talking about tickling it. You want to get that well cleaned up.
Yeah, well, look, the last thing we want is, sure, if we're building to a cover of 1,000 or 1,050 or something like that, the last thing we want is a paddock that has a pile of toughs left in it, and we're trying to build it. And next thing we're grazing it in wet weather on the end of September, and cows are lewing. And, the field is kind of half grazed, and, it's there for 4 rotations. So there's no way they're going to go after it. So I'd much prefer to put it back 2 or 3 days in terms of grass growth and have a clean base there for the back end of the year.
Yeah. And Joe, I suppose it's probably a question you're being asked a bit now at the moment. It's been quite a tough year on the likes of clover this year, but it seems to have started kicking into gear a little bit there now. Once with the little bit of hot weather we're getting. What are you seeing around the country at the moment there? Or is it starting to populate fields now and get up and going?
Yeah, it is. As you said, Ed, it was very hard there, and a lot of the comment was a lot of fields that were quite good in terms of clover percentages in previous years. This spring they were well back and maybe got a little bit of a damage, and as we talked about already, and then there was decent clover in them in June, nothing major. Yeah. It was kind of 10%, whereas maybe other years there might have been 20% and people were reducing from June, but maybe this year they were, keeping going a little bit more. But as I said, in the last couple of weeks, we've had better soil temperatures, better air temperatures, good growth weather, and in general, I've seen a few fields there now that have really kicked on. So in general, if we have that, and we have that kind of 20 to 30% clover in it now, which if we think of it, if it's visually, if it's 20 to 30%, it's probably visually 50%, somewhere in around that. So if we're looking at an awful lot of clover, we need to be thinking about, especially where fertilizer regs are now on farms, we should be for these next, if we're going to call it the August spread and that final maybe September spread as well, I'd be thinking about rightly reducing the nitrogen that's going out on those paddocks.
Yeah, and look, it might be something that people are slightly reluctant to do this year, with the difficulties that we've had and we've just discussed, But I suppose that there is that, if you have enough clover in the sward, the soil temperatures that we have at the moment, there should be absolutely no problem with nitrogen fixation. And look, I suppose if we really want clover to do its job, we need to try it's going to kick on with that bit of less lower levels of chemical in,
Yeah. Just to add to that, there, just said, look, if we have and again, if we're most farmers will end up being tight on fertilizer allowances. So to be honest, there's a better bang for your buck if you put that out on grass, that nitrogen that's left on grass only, and trust that we're going to, get the bit of, that there is going to be fixation. In general, we should be, August and September should be our clover months anyways, we should be getting a bounce from it. So trust, and maybe if you want to, go back with dairy washings or something like that on those paddocks, or, you don't have to reduce the nitrogen fully, but trust it, to pull it back a bit anyways.
Definitely.
What's in the news?
Right, Joe, we were just supposed to be seeing there before we started the recent Grass 10 newsletter come out, and I suppose just some figures we were discussing on it. I suppose going forward, maybe just now into the month of August, you might just maybe give us an overview on some of the targets we should have and should be aiming for, I suppose, to build these reserves, and I suppose the issues we're just after talking about in terms of building up reserves and further on quality, how we might, I suppose, targets we should be looking at and achieve them.
Yeah, so look at, again, autumn grazing targets, it's kind of funny that we've had no summer and all of a sudden we're starting to talk about autumn targets like mad, to be honest. But look at, really and truly, as we said, start, use this next week or 10 days to correct some of the quality issues that are there on farm. Then, wherever you may be, wherever you are, if you had a cover maybe 600, we take someone at a stocking rate of 3 livestock units per hectare. The side second cut ground is coming back in now. At the minute they're back to 3, and they're at 600 at the minute. Like, where do we, and we're on a 20-day rotation. What is the targets for that farm? We want to get out to somewhere in around a 30-day round for the first week of September. Okay, so essentially the big target there, can we extend rotation then now by 2.5 days a week over the next 4 weeks? That's a big one. And then again, the cover per livestock unit, if you're at 200 now at the minute, can we get that to maybe 300, 330? And that has 1,000 of an average farm cover on our farm in early September. And look, we'll try and build on. And again, heavy farms, I suppose you'd only want to be building to somewhere in around 900 in the middle to the end of September. Dry farms with right good infrastructure, we can probably push that to maybe 1050, 1100. But again, the reason we're doing it is essentially grass. I suppose to put grass on the farm in the summer, it's worth somewhere in around 4 cents a kilo. So essentially, if we can grow grass in August and put it on the farm for the back end of the year, we're growing it at 4 cents and we're feeding it to the cow at 11 cents. When it's, so essentially it's pretty much tripling the value. We're feeding it at a value of 11 cents in the autumn. So, when the cost of the feed alternatives that we have to put in are much more expensive. And again, look, it's a tight year. It's a tight year on farms. Anything we can do to keep grass on the farm and keep grazing later on into the back end of the year is going to be massive. So again, have a quick look at the Grass 10 newsletter this week for the grazing targets.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Look, what I'd like to say is thanks very much for Joe for coming on onto the Sod Pod again, and we'd be more than delighted to have you back at any point. It was a pleasure, and what I'd like to say is fair play to Peter. We'll be seeing Peter a lot more often now going forward. Fair play, and thanks very much.
Up the banner.
Huge thanks to John, Ed and Peter, having a great chat there with Joe. Fair play to Joe for coming on. Please God, growth rates throughout August are what we're all hoping for. Mind yourselves out there. Farm smart, farm safe. Hey, thanks for listening to the Sod Pod. We hope you enjoyed it. To find out more, head over to www.grasslandagro.ie or check out our social channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube. That's all for this episode. See you next time.